Well, I want to say this about Greenwood. It has done some harm to us. If the government finds out your house was once sitting on a wetland, they can force you to move without paying you a dime for it. Because this was once a wetland and you built a house in a wetland. There have been cases where people built their homes on land that was once owned by a gas station. And the government said, your land is polluted, there's a big gas tank under you, and you have to remove it at your own expense. And most people do not have the funds to remove and clean up the debris left from the gas station. Have any of you ever heard it, besides from me, anything at all about these kind of situations? I mean, they can happen. Of course, some people have complained about this.
Do they prove to you that your house is on this wetland and or?
Oh, they can. Okay, I'm glad you mentioned. They can call any land they want to a wetland and condemn you for moving there and force you to move out without paying your dime for it. And your land can never be sold because the government now has taken possession of it without compensation. This has happened on a few occasions. Now, not very widespread, where there be a lot of perhaps rebellion. All right. Popular literature, regrettably, again, some of these philosophers are important. Existentialism, Jean-Paul Sartre, that is important, but I'm not going to hold you responsible for them. Postmodernism, art, and I have a daughter who's majoring in art. Regrettably, I don't know a lot about it, so I'm going to pass on that. Science and technology, I do want to mention this. I mean, I'm very much a space enthusiast. Nobody would have guessed the space program would have been high. As a youngster, I read a lot of science fiction, and we read about First on the Moon was one of the books I read. Nobody predicted we'd go to the moon and then just quit going. Just simply quit, and we don't know when we're going back. And nobody predicted that instead of going to Mars, we'd send robots ahead of us, and robots would do our exploring for us. We've sent robots, and we've had some of the robots last a lot longer than we thought. We've landed on asteroids. We've gotten close-up pictures of comets. We have landed robots on the moon, especially on. We've landed robots on Venus, and we landed one on Saturn's moon, Titan. One I'm really anxious to hear about. On July 15th of next year, about 15 we're going to send a flyby to Pluto. Pluto was a planet when the mission embarked. It's since been declared not a planet, but it's the only one of what used to be planets that we've never visited. But we're going to fly by Pluto in July of next year, and I'm going to dare predict that they're going to find something there they didn't expect to see. That they won't see what they expect, and they will find something they did not expect. I don't know what. But anyway, I've been watching the Pluto thing for a while. It's got to where recently, now that we're 15 months out, that it can at least take pictures, but Pluto is just a dot on its camera, but it's going to get much closer. All right, so I could talk a bit more about Pluto. We'll move on. Religion. Religion has tended to become less and less influential in the West as time has gone on. It's been said the average European attends church 3 times, once to be christened when he's born, and the second time to get married, then the third time he's carried in when he's dead. So twice while he's alive, and then he has his funeral at his church when he dies. Europe is in what's called the post-Christian era. Europeans are not very interested in religion. However, I'm going to modify that in a minute. There is a trend on in the West to embrace more religion, but it's not necessarily Christianity. To embrace what might be called in some circles voodooism or mysticism, faith healing, and this is going on a lot in Europe and in Latin America, more so than the United States. In other words, a religion that involves a lot more mysticism than what we feel comfortable with in the United States. The book doesn't mention that, but it does mention fundamentalism, a return to the old ways. Your book mentions how that Pope John the 23rd and his successor, Pope John Paul II, began to say Mass in the vernacular, in local languages, rather than say it in Latin, and to try to make Catholicism more relevant to ordinary everyday lives. Again, each of you can decide for yourself whether this was good or bad. Okay, popular culture, I'm going to skip. When I was making the final exam, there was one question on popular culture, which I'll tell you, those of you who are listening, I took away. Study about fundamentalism before I leave. 50 years ago, and 60 said they told us we have to accept evolution. Today, thanks to the creationist movement, a lot of people are being told you don't have to accept it. The science that supposedly proved it is not there, and maybe this is influencing the return to fundamentalism. All right.